Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. Your home, zombie outbreak in progress. I didn't believe the first alert when it arrived. The phone on my kitchen counter lit up with the blunt force of a government push notification. Alert, ready, do not leave your home. Shelter in place. Avoid contact with infected individuals. It was a little after 7 a.m. in Prince George, British Columbia. Dawn had folded itself into a low ceiling of cloud, the kind of flat grey that made the spruce trees behind my apartment look like paper cutouts. My power meter angled a pale reflection into the kitchen. My kettle ticked as it cooled, and the silence after the buzz of the alert sounded wrong, like a pause that didn't know how to end. I'm a municipal GIS analyst, maps and data mostly, so my reflex was to open a laptop, not a door. I had an email open from the night before about a snow route update for Connaught Drive and Tabor Boulevard, which suddenly felt like a relic from a softer time, even though soft isn't usually how anyone describes winter here. I checked the official channels first. Drive BC, City off PG, the province's emergency management feed. The language matched what was on my phone. The local Ecom 911 social media had a pinned notice. Lines prioritised for medical emergencies only. The University Hospital, UHNBC, posted a critical surge message with triage instructions that suggested people should not show up unless summoned. A friend texted, "You seeing this?" I typed back, "Yes, staying in." Then I put the phone face down because the little read receipt dot made me feel watched. From my third-floor apartment in a wood-frame building on 15th Avenue, I can see the alley, the recycling bins, and the tops of trucks parked on Quebec Street. The sightlines are useful for an anxious person. A city bus sat at the corner with its hazard lights going, doors open to nobody. An orange-vested driver stood inside and stared at the message scrolled on the LED. Out of service. Go home. The driver didn't get off. No one did. The block held its breath. Across the way, a home-based mechanic had rolled down his shop door only halfway and retreated into shadow as if the last foot of daylight could break in. The first person I talked to was my neighbour down the hall, Mrs. Petrov. She's a retired teacher who spent 3 decades wrangling 7th graders and therefore has skills that should be bottled and sold. She knocked softly and said my name like she was reminding me who I was. "Alex," she said. "You saw the message?" I opened the door on the chain. She stood in her wool cardigan, hair pinned up, and held a sealed bag of oats like a small oat-based peace treaty. "Trade?" she asked. "I have extras." I don't know why I laughed, but I did. It felt like we were going to barter our way through something we hadn't agreed to join. I took the oats and gave her a spare 4-litre water jug from the case I keep in the hallway closet. Her look said, "Good, we're starting with the basics." By 8, the hall was a whispery line of conversations through doors. We're a small building, 12 units in 2 mirrored stairwells, and everyone knows everyone just enough to borrow a pinch of salt or complain about the laundry machines. Now we were a street-level committee without a chair. The landlord, Samir, lives in Vancouver and keeps a handyman on retainer who mostly fixes things with goodwill and a very long screwdriver. There was no message from either of them. The power stayed on. The Wi-Fi light on my router blinked like it always does, indifferent to the outer world. But a second alert rolled in at 8:36 a.m. and the language tightened. "Remain inside. Do not approach anyone showing signs of confusion or aggression. Do not attempt to drive to a hospital. Do not congregate. Do not leave your home unless instructed." I started a list in a spiral notebook because the battery in a pen is just my hand. The first lines were water, light, heat, quiet. I filled the bathtub, a habit learned from wildfire seasons when the air turns brown and the news turns steady, and set 2 metal mixing bowls beneath the slow drip from the bathroom tap. I taped a note by the sink. Use plates, not pans. No cooking smells. It didn't make logical sense, exactly. Cooking doesn't carry like shouting. But instinct told me to shrink our signal. The fridge would hold out for a while, and I could switch the router and modem to a small UPS if the power dipped. I ran an extension cord to the hallway and coiled it beneath the runner in case we needed to share. The apartment sounded like it always does. Fridge hum, a conversation in the building across the alley floating through a window, but under it, the city's usual heartbeat had gone thin. At 9 a.m, I called Maya. She's an emergency nurse at UHMBC and my closest friend in town. We met on the Fraser River Dyke Trail 2 summers ago when her dog decided my coffee was a threat to public health and tried to disarm me. The call rolled to voicemail, then my phone lit up with a text. Can't talk. At work. Stay inside. Lock doors. No noise if possible. Don't trust strangers. The last line bothered me. The idea that we might have to choose who counted as one of us. A second later, another text landed, as if she'd had to break it across breaths. If anyone is hurt, call me first, not 911, might get triaged out. We had a ham radio operator in the building, which is one of those small city miracles. Kenji, Unit 3B, a machinist by day and a patient tinkerer by night, has a basement storage locker that looks like a museum gift shop for antennas. He knocked around 10 and asked if anyone had spare AA batteries. I gave him 6 from a pack in my toolbox. He held up a compact handheld transceiver, amateur band, not one of those cheap radios that can accidentally drift into anything, and said he would keep it on local repeaters to see if the clubs were doing check-ins. I'll pass along anything useful, he said, voice measured, as if he'd practiced sounding steady. No speculation, only what's confirmed. He told me his call sign because that's how he introduces himself, VA7KJ. The letters look like a small boat on a wide lake. I wrote them in the notebook anyway. By mid-morning, the city bus finally moved. It crept forward, doors still open, and then stopped at the next block, like the driver wanted to say goodbye to each intersection in person. A pickup rolled through a red light on Quebec and 15th, slow enough to broadcast hesitation instead of hurry. And then 2 more alerts came in quick succession. One from the city, municipal facilities closed, water and power operating, garbage pickup paused. One from the RCMP, stay off the roads. I watched a man in a crisp cycling jersey roll up to the bus stop, check the empty pole, and then stand with his hands on his hips like he was waiting to be scolded by a schedule. I wanted to tell him what the phone had told me, but the window was closed and I did not open it. The first bang on a door came just after noon. It wasn't mine. It was down the hallway. A sharp set of fists on 3D. The one bedroom, where a graduate student named Amar kept a bicycle so clean it could have been hung in a gallery. I could hear the pattern. Bang, bang, bang. A pause. And then a voice too low to make out words, but loud enough to make out need. I looked through my fisheye and saw nothing but the beige of our hallway wall. The knock repeated. The voice said, more clearly now, please, it's me. Everyone can hear everyone else in a building like ours when the world goes thin. I stood with my eye to the peephole and counted my own steps in some other memory. The quiet math of, do I open? Do I stay hidden? The chain on my door glowed like a line I wasn't sure I could keep. Kenji beat me to it. His door opened just enough for his voice to leave and not enough for any part of him to be seen. Who's there? He asked. Name and unit. The voice gave both without a beat. It's Amar, 3D. His lock clacked and unclacked and then clacked again, and I heard muffled conversation. Later, when Kenji relayed what he'd done, he was matter of fact. He told Amar to slide his student card under the door. He looked at the photo, the name, and the signature. It wasn't proof of anything that mattered in the long run, but it was a way to slow the rush of panic into a channel. He opened the door and handed Amar a bottle of water and a mask, the fabric kind none of us had thrown away after the pandemic. Go inside, he said. Text someone you trust in the building. Stay off the hallway. It was abrupt, and it probably saved all of us from having to debate ethics versus caution on day 1. At 1, our building became a circle. We set up a group text. 12 numbers that had only ever seen each other as rent reminders and package alerts, and now were a lifeline. The chat pinged faster than felt safe. We agreed to stop that too. The rules were simple and typed by consensus. No food smells in the hallways, no open doors. One person per stairwell on watch for 15 minutes each hour. Listening only, no engaging. Bathrooms, keep doors shut, fans off, quiet after dusk. If those sound extreme, it's because the alert kept repeating, don't leave your home, don't draw attention, don't approach anyone who isn't in your immediate group. The repeated phrase, stay hidden, hit me the way a red light does when you're the only car on the road at 3 a.m. Your foot still goes to the brake, because rules hold the shape of safety, even when you can't see danger. I propped a thick book in the sliding track of my balcony door and pulled the blackout curtain over the glass. It isn't a sniper-proof solution, just common sense quieting of light and silhouette. I unplugged my smart speaker because the last thing I needed was a voice answering an unspoken question. I stacked my shoes by the bed like I was preparing for a fire drill. Then I took stock the way Maya taught me to do, for any shift in routine. Calories, water, light, heat, information. I counted cans, dry goods, and protein bars as if inventory itself could lower my heart rate. I printed a single sheet with water used today and taped it to the fridge with a pen beside it. A little ritual to place my hands around the size of the issue. The first distant shouting I heard wasn't angry, it was pleading. Someone on the street called a name repeatedly and then punctuated it with please. It's a particular kind of word when used like that. It spilled up the alley and echoed off the cinder block wall opposite. I didn't move. The watch in the east stairwell, a grad student in 2E, texted, 2 people at the dumpster. One seems injured, both unsteady. Another message came from the west stairs. Amar again, a third person moving south on Quebec. Very slow, not asking for help. We decided to do nothing. That is a sentence you can only really understand once you've tried to write it with your own hands. Inaction is active. You hold still so hard your shoulders ache. At 2:30, Kenji pinged me. Radio net on VE7 RSC says to maintain shelter. Hospitals overloaded. Some repeaters are being held open for emergency traffic. He didn't add commentary. His discipline helped all of us. I asked if he'd heard anything from outside the region. He sent a short note. Similar advisories in Kamloops and the lower mainland. Then, trust your building, keep it quiet. It wasn't a command, it was a pattern we were beginning to recognize. The way you teach yourself to remember that doing less is the hard thing. It would be tidier if I said the first day passed in a steadily building line toward the point where everything changed. But that's not how it felt from the inside. There were gentle stretches where the city sounded normal again. A truck backing into a loading dock. A raven heckling the world from the telephone pole. A distant train on the CN line, followed by sharp interruptions that forced my brain into a crouch. An old sedan idled at the corner for 10 minutes and then drove away so slowly that I could read the dealership sticker twice. Somewhere nearby, a metal sign fell and clanged like a coin on plate glass. A siren barreled past on Ospika Boulevard and faded toward the hospital and then cut off mid-wail, and the silence after that had a shape. Around 4, we heard a voice from the building across the alley. Not a shout, a level tone carrying across the gap, with the peculiar clarity of someone who doesn't worry about being overheard. Stay inside, the voice called. I can't help you. It took me a second to realize he was talking to his own building, not to us, putting authority into the air as a fence. He repeated it twice, the exact same cadence, as if reading from a laminated card. Then he vanished from his window, and the shadow of him crossing the room tucked itself back into normal. I made tea and ate a quiet sandwich and felt more like a person than a bystander. I pictured Maya at the hospital, moving through rooms with that laser attention she keeps for complex tasks. I imagined her voice in my ear. You're doing fine, Alex. Keep it boring. Boring was the right verb. When the sun dissolved into a grey wrapping, I went through the apartment and laid towels at the base of doors, not for smoke or cold, but for the imagining of smell. It's strange what your hands will do to soothe your head. At dusk, the building voted, with a series of thumbs-up emojis, on blocking the outer doors from the inside with furniture we could move quickly. Not a barricade, just a suggestion. We chose a bookshelf for the west stairwell and a heavy dining chair for the east, and 2 of us met at each door, masks on, gloved, quick. The hallway smelled like sawdust and an old mop. We agreed on a signal if anyone needed entries reopened fast. 3 knocks, steady, repeated twice, then names through wood. It's amazing how these tiny patterns make your chest loosen. Security isn't just locks, it's expectations lined up in a row. When full dark came, the building changed. Daylight hides a lot with its big half-truths. Night makes you narrate every outline. I sat in the kitchen with my notebook open and drew the shape of our floor from memory, as if I'd forgotten it overnight. I penciled in the positions of the smoke alarms, the breaker panel, the vent grills, the cold air return. I marked the north wall where sound carries least and wrote my own name beside it, like a reminder of where to choose to be if anything overhead shifted. It felt clinical and a little absurd. Then I wrote the names of my neighbors: 3A Alex Me, 3B Kenji, 3C Petrov, 3D Amar, 2E grad student, Sam, 2C, truck driver, Ben, 2B, quiet couple. I think teachers, assigning professions made the page human again. Kenji knocked at 8:30 with a clipboard like we were playing house. He'd started a daily check-in list for each unit. Water okay, heat okay, anyone sick, anyone alone. He signed the bottom himself in block letters, like the head of a volunteer shift. I added my name and wrote, all good, quiet. Then I stood in the door with the chain on and we talked for 3 minutes. We didn't mention the word infected. We said people and outside and noises. He mentioned that some repeaters had gone silent, not because of anything dramatic, just power issues or exhausted operators. We're fine here, he said, for now. We both heard what he left out, if we stay that way. At 9, the lights in the building across the alley went out, one by one, like a slow countdown. A pair of headlights glided onto Quebec Street and paused with their beams cutting my blackout curtain in a thin white seam. I held still. My phone buzzed. From Maya. The message was short. Still here. Keep the lights low. Keep quiet. We're seeing changes in behavior. I didn't ask for details because not knowing is sometimes the same as breathing. Do you need anything? I sent. No, just time, she replied. Time changed shape. I lay on the floor beside the couch with a pillow under my ribs and counted 100 breaths, then 100 more, then lost track of which 100 I was in. I woke at some point, which implies I slept, which I don't remember choosing. My first thought was tea, which means part of me still worked. The second day began without birdsong. The grey was the same and the apartment the same, and I let the sameness reassemble me. Water use today got a new date. I texted the floor chat. Status? The replies came in one by one. Quiet dot, fine dot, all good dot, no sounds. I nodded at the silence like it was a person I owed respect. At 9, someone tried our building's main door. It was not the back door near the alley that carries sound like a megaphone. It was the front. The rattle started politely, the way a neighbour checks a handle to see if they've left themselves locked out, and then grew confident. We had agreed not to approach and not to shout. We listened. The rattle moved into knocking, then went still. For 10 minutes, nothing. Then 3 knocks, steady, repeated twice. The signal we had set for ourselves. Kenji and I were both already texting. Did anyone give the signal? The chat remained empty. We waited. Someone breathed into the door. You can hear that. If you've ever stood on either side of a thin line of wood, a person's edge against a barrier. Then a voice spoke our building's address. It was my voice. That's what the shape of it was. The voice said the number and the street, and then, I live here, let me in. You learn a lot about yourself when your own voice arrives from the wrong place. My hands went cold. I typed, do not open. Petrov chimed in immediately. Not you, stay calm, Amar. We hold. Kenji, stay hidden. The voice outside kept talking. It had the kind of slow punctuation of someone trying not to inspire alarm. It used my name. Alex, it said. It's me. The cadence was good. It was either a person who knew how to listen or something that had practiced listening to us. I lay on the floor again, this time on purpose. My breath wanted to speed up. I counted to 5 on the inhale and 7 on the exhale, the way Maya taught me once on a fire road above Cranbrook, when the smoke made it hard to finish a sentence. The voice finally went away around 10. It didn't say goodbye. It didn't even sigh. The air around the door loosened like a muscle unclenching. The first word in the group chat was a simple, okay, followed by a line of individual checkmarks. That lull after a false alarm is like standing up too fast and seeing stars. I called Maya and got 3 rings before voicemail. I texted her the whole exchange in staccato lines, because if I tried to summarize, I'd leave out something crucial. That the voice had my tempo, that it used my address as if reading it off a piece of mail, that it didn't try the east door after the west door. She sent back, they mimic, stay calm, stay quiet, trust your rules. It was the first time she'd used anything like a word that might live in a horror movie. I stared at it and let my stomach argue with my head. Then, we are seeing delirium in some cases, disorientation in others, families confused, sleep loss, dehydration, some repetition. The ellipsis did its work. I didn't ask for more. We changed our internal schedule. It wasn't written anywhere, but we felt it. Daytime was now as dangerous as night if we broadcast anything into the hallway. The stairwell watchers switched to shorter rotations. Water flushes, those ordinary, helpful sounds that move through pipes, were clustered into a 5-minute window every 2 hours. Someone suggested putting tape over the door latches to damp the click. It helped. We rigged a bell on each side of each stairwell door that we could disarm from inside, but that would whisper if moved, just a key ring nudged against a nail on a piece of cord. It wasn't an alarm so much as a reminder we wanted to give ourselves. I built a tiny power plan. The modem and router went onto the UPS, the laptop stayed unplugged unless needed, and the battery packs came out of their drawer like little square talismans. Petrov has candles, but the rule was no open flame unless the power died, and we all agreed. Kenji produced a crank-powered radio like a magician, and it delivered a steady stream of public advisories from as far as Calgary and as near as the campus station. Most of it repeated the same phrases: stay indoors, do not engage, follow local guidance. Some of it brought texture: certain neighborhoods under temporary curfew, public works crews focusing on substations. The city was trying to hold shape around the edges of a moving problem. It kept feeling like I should be doing more. Instead, I did boring things very precisely. I wiped counters to keep smells low. I folded laundry slowly so time had a task to hang itself on. I wrote down every alert we received with the timestamp and the exact words used. I made 2 sandwiches at noon, so evening, me wouldn't be tempted to rattle around the kitchen with cabinet doors. It felt like prepping for an exam I couldn't see the questions for. In the afternoon, we had a quiet conversation through 2 doors and a hallway about the question we had all pressed to the backs of our tongues. What if someone inside needs help? Maya's message had been clear. Call her first. Not because she would necessarily be able to come, but because she could tell us what level of concern meant, what level of risk. We made a plan. If someone was short of breath, we would move them to the coolest, quietest corner of their apartment and place them half-seated. If someone was confused, we would try a phone call before a visit. If someone needed water, we would slide bottles on a towel with a string attached so we could pull it back without hands meeting. It sounds clinical when I write it, but it's just how you treat the people you share walls with when the walls are your entire world. At 3, Maya finally called. Her voice was lower than usual, not weak, but tuned down like you dial a radio to reduce static. I have 60 seconds, she said. I wanted to hear you breathing. I told her about the voice at the door. I kept the details brief the way she keeps details brief when we're skiing, and she doesn't want me to imagine speed I can't handle. "That's happening," she said. "Not often, but in clusters. People repeat what they hear. Some copy, some plead. Stay hidden. Do not open doors unless you planned it in writing ahead of time." I told her we had a plan. I told her we had little bells on the stairwell handles, and she said warmly, "That's smart." It felt like a medal pinned to a t-shirt. Before she hung up, she added, "We lost some phones at the hospital today." I didn't understand at first, then I did. Not everyone hands a phone back when they leave a room. "If you get a call from my number that feels wrong," she said, "text me the word clock before you answer." We didn't agree on it like spies. We just let the idea settle between us and said yes because it cost nothing and might buy a calm second someday. Then she was gone again. Evening returned with a softness that felt unearned. I sat on the floor and listened to the building breathe. Pipe clicks, a microwave beep, a footfall, the thin wheeze of air squeezing around a weather strip. I felt the shape of my own breathing fit into the building's rhythm. I wrote that sentence in the notebook and felt embarrassed by the poetry of it. But I left it there because it was true. At 9, we did a roll call in the group chat. Not strict, just one by one. Names and an emoji of your choice. By 9:30, everyone had spoken. The last was Ben in 2C, a logging truck driver who rarely speaks in the hall, but now wrote, "All quiet. If anyone needs heavy lifting later, I'm your guy." It felt like a beam we could all lean on. On day 3, the sound of distant helicopters began. Not constant, not dramatic, just intermittent pulses that made the hair at the back of my neck announce, "There are more layers to this than your floor plan." One passed low enough that the dishes in my cabinet touched, and I pictured hands in flight suits checking maps and making choices. Kenji said the radio mentioned inter-facility transfers. Maybe they were moving people between hospitals. Maybe they were doing something I didn't have a name for. The important part for us was, do nothing new. Around 10, our first internal crisis arrived. Mrs. Petrov texted me a single line, "I don't feel right." The words were an iceberg. I called and she answered on the first ring. "Light-headed," she said, like I stood up too fast. I asked her to sit. I asked her to drink a little water. I asked her if she'd eaten. She had, but smaller portions. We repeated her medications, what, when, with food or without. Then I texted Maya the exact details. The reply came back in under a minute. Check her blood pressure if she has a cough. Ask if there's chest pain, shortness of breath, confusion. If not, try rest and slow hydration. If it worsens, tell me. Petrov did have a cough. She repeated her numbers, calmly, like she was teaching a room. The readings weren't alarming. We stayed on the phone for 10 minutes while she sat in a high-backed chair and sipped. Her voice steadied. "I think I frightened myself," she said. "It's a loud day in a quiet body." I told her that phrase was perfect. She told me not to compliment an old teacher or I'd be stuck with homework. The day wore steady. In the alley, a dog trotted with purpose and no human. It paused at the corner, looked both ways with more sense than most of us, and vanished east like it had an appointment. Around noon, a freight train crossed the Fraser Bridge and moaned its long cord, and I almost wept with relief at the sheer normal function of a thing. Trains don't care about rumours. They care about schedules and steel. In the afternoon, I went through my pantry again, not to count, but to inventory by meals. It changes your head to think in dinners instead of cans. Rice beans tin of salmon is more comforting than carbohydrate protein, because the former sounds like a thing you feed yourself in a life. I labelled with sticky notes, 5 quick dinners, 7 patient ones, 10 emergency only. I set aside 3 small bags for the building in case someone's day hit a wall. If nothing else, I could sneak a granola bar under a door like a cartoon thief and make someone smile. Near dusk, Kenji sent a message that had important at the start, which he never does. He'd picked up an update, a water main break a few blocks north. City crews were on it, but we might see brief pressure drops. "It's not a signal to panic," he wrote, "but it means this is exactly the kind of moment we prepared for. Quiet action. We agreed to stagger sink and toilet use for an hour. which felt both ridiculous and holy. The building responded like we'd rehearsed. Silence, then small noises clustered in small windows. If you'd been outside, you wouldn't have noticed a thing. That night, someone tried the back door again. The bells whispered, the handle turned, the pause on the other side held. 3 knocks, steady, twice. The voice, different now, said a name none of us knew, Nora. The word floated down the stairwell and lay there like a dropped glove. No one answered. After a long minute, the word came again, closer to a question. Nora? Then a longer pause and a shuffling step, and then nothing. I pictured the person on the other side doing their own version of our breathing exercise, trying to make a decision, trying to see around a corner without moving. It didn't help either of us. On day 4, I stopped looking at the time as a number and started feeling it as a weight. The phone still told me exactly where we were on the clock, but my body told me where we were in this. I kept the curtain closed and cracked the window an inch at dawn so the apartment could trade air. I wrote in the notebook, vent, 15 minutes, and set a timer. It felt like a secret handshake with the day. A truck rolled past with a city logo on its door, and I watched the brake lights flicker at the end of the block like a heartbeat. My hands wanted to do something large. I fed them tasks. Sweep, wipe, fold, check. Mid-morning, I heard laughter. Not close, not many. Just a short, surprised burst from somewhere to the west. The kind of involuntary sound that arrives when your friend says something that deflates your invented catastrophe. It was such an ordinary sound that it tilted the whole day toward possible. I let myself laugh, quietly, at nothing in particular. Maybe at the way my teabag string always slides into the mug and I fish it out with a spoon, like an angler pulling up a white flag. At 11, the building voted on a note we could hang inside our stairwell, for us a tiny poster to keep our heads aligned. Petrov wrote it longhand on a sheet of cardstock and taped it where we could see it between floors. It read, "Stay hidden, keep it boring, move small, eat on purpose, drink water, listen more than you speak. When you speak, be kind. If you don't know, wait. If you're scared, say so. We'll hold the quiet together." I read it every time I passed and felt the muscles in my face relax from their set expression. A grimace is just a smile that forgot to come back. In the afternoon, the first official message that gave us a horizon arrived. It didn't promise an end. It didn't even promise a curve. It said, primary assessment phase ongoing. Additional guidance in 72 hours. Municipal services remain active. Emergency response available, but limited. The helpful part wasn't the words. It was the existence of a future message. Someone somewhere had written a calendar entry for us. I didn't need the details in that moment. I needed the idea of the next. Night fell gently. The helicopters were elsewhere. The train tempo did its slow song. The bells didn't whisper. We did a late roll call and added a new practice. One good thing. My one good thing. The teabag string didn't fall in. Petrov's. I found the last of my good chocolate. A Mars. I set up a camera looking at the hallway, not to watch, just to know if something changes while I sleep. Ben's. I fixed the hinge on our bathroom cabinet and felt like a wizard. It sounds like a game a camp counselor would lead. It worked like medicine. On day 5, Maya's voice arrived with a softness that I think she saves for night shifts and new babies. "You sound steady," she said. And when I told her about the new practices, the bells, the poster, the roll call, she exhaled a tiny laugh. "You built a unit," she said. "That's what this is." She didn't mean a unit like a military formation. She meant a unit like a group of people who know that they are together on purpose. "We're seeing some neighborhoods trying to self-organize in helpful ways," she said, "and some in panicky ways. The helpful ones look like what you're doing." She paused, then added, "If you hear singing outside at night, don't join in." I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. I filed it in the part of my brain that says know the difference between comfort and a trap. Sometime before noon, the world did something I'm not going to dress up with adjectives. A city truck pulled into the alley. 2 workers in high-vis jackets got out, clipped a laminated notice to our back fence, and left without looking up at the windows. The notice said, "Water service maintenance scheduled 0800-1200 tomorrow. Short interruptions possible." It was not the news that mattered. It was the choreography of it. Work would happen. Someone had planned it. Our job stayed exactly the same. Stay hidden, keep it boring, move small. That night, for the first time, I slept without waking. When I opened my eyes, the apartment was the colour of an early hour that doesn't have a proper name, and the birds had returned, as if the sky had cut a deal with them. The kettle ticked, the fridge hummed, a truck braked at the light on Quebec and 15th. I stood and stretched, and felt a small clatter inside me as fear shifted to the side to make room for something else. Not quite hope, not yet, but something like a plan you can start to say out loud. I wrote the plan in the notebook, even though it was mostly what we were already doing. Daytime, listen, check neighbours, eat on purpose, hydrate. Dusk, lights low, roll call with one good thing. Night, sleep if you can. It looked childish on paper, the way elementary school schedules look from the outside. The thing about those schedules is, they work on adults too. We never stopped hearing the wrong knocks. They came randomly, like static in a song. 3 steady taps repeated twice, and then a voice saying something that either was meant to invite us into our own demise, or was simply a person lost in an instruction their mind had misfiled. We let them pass. Once, the voice was a child's. Once, it used the tone of a delivery driver naming a last name from a printed slip. Once, it said nothing at all and just let the silence lean against the door. The doors held. The bells whispered. We breathed. On day 7, Maya told me a small story that I keep like a coin in my pocket. "We had a little boy on the ward," she said, and my heart knotted until she continued. "Who taught me a thing. He'd built a fort with 2 chairs and a sheet, and he called it Home Inside Home. When anyone asked if he was okay, he said, 'Yes, I'm in Home Inside Home.' That's what you are, an inside home." I told our building that story at the next roll call. Petrov wrote it on a sticky note and taped it beside the poster. We all stopped and read it when we passed, and felt our shoulders drop a centimetre. Around noon that day, the city posted an updated map of open grocery hours, pharmacy windows, and the blocks where crews were working. It was a practical thing that carried a lot of emotional freight. We were not going out. That was not our role. But knowing that there were schedules and plans and daylight jobs reminded me that the world had not erased itself. I'm a map person. Seeing boxes on a street grid is the same as seeing a heartbeat on a monitor to me. It meant more than now. And so the days built themselves into something like a temporary architecture. We didn't get cocky with it. We didn't get sentimental. We ate on purpose. We drank water. We listened more than we spoke. We held the quiet together. When fear rose like a wave and spilled into the hall, we let it break, and then we mopped it up with someone's good chocolate or someone else's hinge repair story. The wrong knocks kept coming, and we kept not answering, and the not answering became, in its way, a reply. We're here. We're together. We're staying hidden. One evening, as the last of the day's light softened into something like music, I stepped to the window and moved the curtain a single finger's width. Down on Quebec, a city truck paused, and a worker got out and checked the padlock on the alley gate. He tugged it once, tested the fence with a flat palm, then looked up at the building. I let the curtain fall. I didn't need to see his face. I knew what he was looking for. Signs that the people inside were keeping their side of the deal. We were. We are. I closed the notebook and slid it under the edge of the couch and lay on the floor with a pillow under my ribs, my shoes lined up by the bed, the bells quiet, the poster breathing its soft instruction into the stairwell. The building settled around me the way a good coat settles onto your shoulders, not a shield against weather exactly, but a reminder that you are wrapped in something built for you. Outside, the city turned slowly around the river and the bridges and the rails. Inside, We held the quiet and waited for the next message, ready to do the hardest thing we'd learned to do: nothing on purpose. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.